There are many dangers in the Klondike. The ground can freeze solid overnight. Equipment can fail without warning. Gold can disappear just when you think you found a promising pay streak. But for Tony Beets, the most dangerous threat to his empire wasn't mechanical, geological, or even financial. It was betrayal. For over 40 years, Tony Beets built his mining empire from grit, instinct, and relentless work ethic. At Paradise Hill, one of the most recognized claims ever featured on Gold Rush, he didn't just build a gold operation, he built a culture, a crew, a reputation that stretched across the Yukon. People worked for Tony because he was tough but fair, demanding but loyal. If you gave everything to the operation, he gave everything back. That trust was the foundation. And foundations are not supposed to crack. It started quietly, too quietly. Tony had been walking the eastern boundary of Paradise Hill, a remote stretch of terrain he rarely visited. The ground there was rough and historically considered less promising, but Tony had always believed in knowing every acre he owned. He had fought hard for those claims, and no section went unchecked for long. As the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the landscape, something caught his attention. The ground looked disturbed. Not naturally disturbed, not the uneven churn of wildlife or seasonal runoff. This was deliberate. The soil looked freshly turned, overburden piled neatly to the side. Tony approached slowly. The first hole was about 6 feet deep and 8 feet across. The dirt was fresh, not yet weathered by wind or rain. Whoever had dug it had done so recently, and whoever dug it knew what they were doing. This wasn't random trespassing. This was professional excavation. What made Tony's blood run cold wasn't the hole itself, it was where it was located. 3 years earlier, Tony had commissioned private geological surveys that suggested a possible extension of an old gold channel directly beneath that area. The data had never been made public. It wasn't shared with outsiders. Only immediate family and select senior management had access. Either this was a cosmic coincidence, or someone had access to information they absolutely should not have had. Tony grabbed his radio and called for Mike Beets. When Mike arrived, they expanded their search. Within 100 yards, they found 2 more holes. Same depth, same precision, same fresh overburden. It wasn't exploratory digging, it was targeted extraction. Near the creek, there were signs of water disturbance and processed tailings. Whoever had done this hadn't just dug, they'd brought portable washing equipment. They'd processed the material on site, they had taken the gold, and they had left almost nothing behind. The RCMP were called immediately. Constable Morrison and his team examined the area. Footprints suggested at least 3 individuals. Track marks pointed to a small excavator, likely around 20 tons. Sluice patterns in the tailings indicated experienced operators. They knew what they were doing, Morrison confirmed. Gold traces in the leftover gravel proved the thieves had successfully recovered color. They hadn't wasted time, they hadn't guessed, they had known. That meant insider information. As Tony stood there staring at the empty pit that had once held his pay dirt, his mind began replaying recent events. There had been signs, subtle ones. Weeks earlier, Mini Beets had mentioned fuel discrepancies. Diesel consumption was running 10 to 15% higher than expected based on logged equipment hours. In an operation where margins mattered, that wasn't insignificant. Tony had dismissed it. Maybe lower quality fuel, maybe inefficiency. There had been more urgent issues, breakdowns in 60-mile, scheduling problems, pressure to meet targets. Then Kevin, the head mechanic who had worked under Tony for 15 years, had casually mentioned something odd. Equipment occasionally seemed moved from where it had been parked, an excavator facing a different direction in the morning. Nothing dramatic, just enough to notice. Tony had brushed that off too. Large crews meant occasional miscommunication. Then there was the security footage. Mike had been reviewing camera recordings for an unrelated reason when he noticed a truck entering the property at around 2 a.m. one Tuesday. It appeared to belong to a crew member. Instead of heading toward the shop, it drove toward the eastern boundary. The camera didn't cover that far.
Tony had intended to ask around. He never did. Now those three anomalies, fuel, equipment movement, and late-night truck, aligned into a clear pattern. Someone had been running night operations. Someone had been using his fuel. Someone had been moving equipment, and someone had been scouting locations with precision. The worst part wasn't the stolen gold, it was the realization that the threat had been internal. The next morning, Tony gathered the crew. Meetings at Paradise Hill were usually straightforward: production updates, equipment assignments, problem solving. This one felt different. "We've got a security problem," Tony began. "Someone's been mining our claim without authorization." The room stiffened. He explained the holes, the processing, the evidence. Then came the question he had been dreading. "Do you think someone on the crew is involved?" Tony didn't lie. "I think someone provided information." The silence that followed was heavier than Yukon winter. Kevin's face tightened. 15 years I've worked for you, now I'm a suspect?" Tony could feel the shift instantly. Defensive posture, crossed arms, avoided eye contact. Trust had cracked. Later, Kevin confronted him privately. "If you think I'm stealing, fire me now." Tony didn't think Kevin was guilty, but suspicion had poisoned the air. That night, Tony did something rare. He apologized. Around the fire pit near the crew quarters, as darkness settled over Paradise Hill, he admitted he had handled the situation poorly. "I need your help," he said. The tension eased slightly. Instead of treating the crew as suspects, he asked them to become allies. But Tony knew something else had to be done. If the thieves wanted to exploit knowledge, he would give them bait. He and Mike Beets identified another remote section with real geological potential. They made sure conversations about testing that area were overheard. They left maps visible. They planted subtle hints of rich ground. Meanwhile, hidden trail cameras were installed with night vision and motion detection. The RCMP agreed to monitor remotely and stage officers nearby if needed. For a week, nothing happened. Then, at 2:47 a.m. on the 8th night, Tony's phone buzzed. Motion detected. Multiple heat signatures. Equipment noise. They were back. Tony and Mike positioned themselves at a concealed ridge overlooking the site. Through night vision, they watched three figures working with a small excavator and portable sluice. They moved with practiced coordination. This wasn't their first time. Then one figure stepped into better light and removed his jacket. Tony felt the air leave his lungs. It was Brad, one of his excavator operators, a man he had mentored, trusted, defended. "That's Brad," Tony whispered. The RCMP moved in swiftly. Lights flooded the scene. Two suspects attempted to flee and were apprehended. Brad did not run. He stood frozen, caught, exposed, arrested. Later, Constable Morrison revealed that Brad had confessed. He'd been working with two outside partners for 6 weeks. He provided geological information in exchange for a cut of the recovered gold. His reason? Medical bills insurance wouldn't cover. Tony listened without expression. Explanation did not equal justification. Brad had stolen gold, but worse, he had stolen trust. In the days that followed, the story spread through the Klondike. Opinions circulated. Some sympathized, others criticized. Inside the operation, morale dipped further. People worked quietly, carefully. No one wanted attention. Then Tony Beets confronted Tony with an uncomfortable truth. "You're running a prison," she told him. "Cameras everywhere, restricted access, suspicion in every conversation. That's not what you built." Tony realized something. Brad's betrayal had hurt the operation, but Tony's reaction was hurting it more. If he let paranoia define leadership, then Brad would have stolen something far more valuable than gold. The next morning, Tony called another meeting. "We've caught Brad," Tony said. "He'll face charges." Then he made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. "We're pulling most of the cameras, restoring open access for senior crew, running this operation on trust again." There was hesitation, then slow nods. Kevin approached him afterwards. "That took courage." "Felt like jumping," Tony admitted. "Trust is always a jump," Kevin replied. As winter approached and operations at Paradise Hill shut down for the season, Tony stood overlooking the claim. They had recovered some stolen gold, they had exposed vulnerabilities, they had learned painful lessons, but they had also preserved something priceless: the soul of Paradise Hill. After 40 years, Tony Beets understood something deeper than geology or machinery. Gold builds empires, but trust keeps them standing. At Paradise Hill, featured for years on Gold Rush, Tony chose culture over control, loyalty over paranoia, leadership over fear. Scars remained, but scars are reminders. Reminders to stay vigilant without becoming bitter. Reminders that vulnerability is the price of building something meaningful. In the Klondike, gold is precious, but trust? Trust is everything. And in choosing to trust again,